Good to see you.
Welcome, always.
This is part 2 of our discussion on medical aid and dying.
Yes.
And you can find both on YouTube and some snippets on our Facebook page here at Inhora.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to this conversation. Always educational, informative, giving people two of the different perspectives on the topic. Very diverse, very transparent and open, and always with love.
Very important. Part of this is to also show how we can have very divergent views and still respect one another tremendously and have an open conversation. And we feel like if this could happen with all things that we disagreed on in the world, it would be a different place. So
it would absolutely be so different, and a lot of people just aren't courageous enough to look at their own thoughts or feelings, and they get stuck. I'm in this party, or this is what everybody else that I associate with believes, and they're not willing to kind of have their ideas shaken or to have these types of conversations. So I'm glad that we're both up to it.
Yes, and just to remind you, I'm Libby Hopkins. I'm a hospice nurse and educator, and
I'm Miles. I'm the executive director of Inhora, the hospice home in Albuquerque.
Awesome. So maybe we begin, if I might, Miles, just reiterate some of the safeguards in the medical aid and dying law, also known as the Elizabeth Whitefield end-of-life options legislation.
Here in New Mexico.
Here in New Mexico, absolutely. And our laws are similar in many ways with the other states that have aid and dying as a legal part of practice. And some of the things that are the same are must be an adult. The individual must be an adult. The individual must be of sound mind, or you might say decisionally capable, able to understand their illness and what they're about to do. The individual must have a 6-month prognosis for the end of life, and the individual must be able to self-ingest the medication. I think this is really important. Nobody else may give the medication to somebody else, and the person is asked prior to ingesting, in many ways repeatedly, in all of the situations I've been involved in, asked repeatedly if this is really what they want, if they understand, letting them know that they have an opportunity to change their mind up until the very last instant. And many people do actually get the prescription and never take it. So it's kind of a reassurance that some people don't ever use, but they have that reassurance.
That's true. Thanks for that overview. Today we're going to be jumping into just kind of spur of the moment type things, but you wanted to cover some specific things. One of them is I posted on social media a description of physician-assisted suicide as being an overdose of multiple medications, and Libby wanted to discuss that a little bit. In that same post, I discussed how there really isn't good research out there about medical aid in dying and how it affects the body and what damage and what internal experience it is for the person who's going through it. We know what those medications do in smaller amounts for therapeutic purposes, but it's not as easy to identify those harms. And we do also know that not every MAID use, and I'm sure you realize this too, has a happy ending and is peaceful, but sometimes it goes wrong. And I think part of that is because of these medications that are being used in high amounts, not just 10 times more than normal therapeutic amount, but 1,000 times more for some of them. So what were your thoughts and where did you want to take that?
Okay. I think with overdosing, one of the major components of an overdose is taking medications that are not prescribed or taking more medication than is prescribed. And in the case of aid and dying, this is a prescribed dose of medication.
So
that's
because
what I
it's
don't consider an overdose.
okay, so because it's a prescribed amount by a provider, it means it's not an overdose because it doesn't meet those two other things. It's not more than enough. It's following the order.
It's following the
But
prescription.
the thing is, the people who are writing the prescriptions, they're taking good guesses, and it's normal practice throughout the US, throughout Canada, to use this amount, but then there aren't actual studies to show what it's doing. There's qualitative studies, there's the number of how many people are doing it, there's basic observations, but there's not an actual study of what digoxin does in this hugely larger than therapeutic amount, how it affects the body.
Mm-hmm.
Similar with morphine and the other medications. But they're taking that chance for the purpose of honoring somebody's autonomy and ending their life. But because we actually don't have the research of what it does, it really concerns me that we could actually be causing suffering, but they can't speak up about it.
Okay. Have you ever been with somebody who has ingested the medication for aid and dying?
No, I haven't.
So it is typically a very comfortable death, and when we see that somebody is, just as we assess for symptoms that are adverse symptoms in somebody who is dying without using MAID, we go by looking at the person, and if the person is calm, their heart's beating slowly, their respirations are calming, their eyes are closed, we don't have a reason to believe, just as in a natural death, we don't have any reason, there wouldn't be any reason to believe that there's suffering going on. Typically there's something that happens in the body visibly that when somebody is suffering.
Yeah, but just a couple comments on that. With natural death, we do know what the body does because that's been studied, and whether it's measuring vital signs or understanding the natural process of, like, let's say, the stomach shutting down and not being interested in food. So we understand the biology of that, but we don't understand the biology and impact of, let's say, a huge amount of digoxin that's meant to stop the heart and what that feels like. And another kind of comment is, just because somebody looks comfortable on the outside, we actually know from science and from qualitative reports of people who were, like, let's say, in a surgery where they saw the thing happening and they were aware of it, but they couldn't speak up. They looked like they were sleeping, but they just couldn't communicate it.
So in a surgery, for example, somebody is under anesthesia, which
and that's what, I mean, morphine, that's some of the medications that are in the MAID medication. So it's having a similar effect of putting them to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that still is different from our propofol and some of the other medications that we use solely for the purpose of putting somebody to sleep and taking away their consciousness. Also, if the person wanted, or their family wanted, there would be no philosophical reason to do this or symptom management reason, but if you wanted to know, we could take the vital signs of the person who's using aid and dying, as long as they were okay with that. And if the example you used would affect your blood pressure, your pulse, your respirations, we would be able to absolutely, we have the means to measure that, and we could, if the person were allowing us to do that.
Yeah, well, that actually brings up a great point. Every other medication, including the amount of the medication before it's able to go on the market, is studied, and through smaller amount of groups testing it, then the next increasing it, and there's a step-by-step process in order to make sure that this isn't harming, that it's doing what it's supposed to do, it's having all of the impact, it's measuring the vital signs, it's measuring all of those things. But medical aid in dying didn't go through that because all the medications in it are legal. But now the purpose isn't therapeutic, the purpose is to kill for somebody to end their life.
So we're not killing anybody. First of all, I want to address when you said physician-assisted suicide, and this is not considered suicide. The cause of death is the diagnosis that has put them on hospice or has given them a 6-month
That's
diagnosis.
the law. Yeah, that's the law in New Mexico.
Exactly.
And other states are modeling that same thing.
Yes.
That it's not on the death certificate that they took MAID and that's what killed them. But I want to go back, is every other medication that's prescribed goes through a rigorous testing and to understand what it actually does, but that never happened with
Sorry, I jumped back.
medical aid in dying.
Yes, so you know about the black box, and when medications are used off-label, and that is not illegal in many of the medications that we have, as a matter of fact. For one example is when people have the excessive secretions, or what some people term as the death rattle. Very often we use ophthalmic drops, we use eye drops in order to dry those secretions, and that is something that is not what the drops are used for. In fact, we do a lot of education around people feeling funny. And this is not for people with utilizing MAID. This is for naturally dying people, for as comfort measure, and to dry out those secretions, which are not only disturbing for the patient, but they're very disturbing to the loved ones. And so
it has a therapeutic effect that's known and understood and identified, even though it's not on the label. But we're not talking, we actually know what these medications do. The ones that are in medical aid in dying, they're being used for the very purpose, not a black box component, but for the purpose of digoxin is given to shut down the heart. For
and
example.
it's prescribed, and it's prescribed for that purpose.
But in other cases, it's meant to help manage arrhythmias and things that are, chronic diseases, and it's meant to have that therapeutic, comforting effect to support someone's life. But it hasn't been studied what the impact of giving so much of it is, with the intent of basically damaging the heart and ending the function of the heart.
And sometimes we give medications that somebody has a side effect from, and so we don't know, you're right, what medication will do for each person, but that's true for every single medication. Someone may have a paradoxical reaction, someone may have, and that's true with every single medication we give, even in some cases, medications that someone's been on for a long time.
It can change in effect over time, but we do know at least the majority of people, and we know this, the reason we give digoxin is to damage the heart and to make it stop working. And we know it's very effective, and we know it applies to at least almost all of the population, if not every single person, especially given in such a high quantity. And we're doing it at an amount that is a guess, because the research hasn't been done to show, if we give this much, it'll have this effect.
Well, it's not necessarily a guess. We have years of research from Oregon and Washington, some of the first states where it was legal, and we can see exactly what it's doing to the body, that it very slowly and most often very comfortable death. And so we have seen that for many years.
So we know it works, but we don't know why we're using the amount that we are.
Oh, we do.
It's just kind of been over. I mean, I'm thinking they probably have an idea, well, if this amount of the medication does this, so if we think, okay, well, we want it to have a much stronger an overdose, that's why I use the word overdose, than the therapeutic amount. We want it
Depends what
to
the
kill,
therapy
not
is,
to
right?
treat. We want it to end the heart's function, not to support the heart's function. So we're going to give it more and more and more, and we think this much is going to do it.
Just think of all of the years and all of the testing we've done with various medications and doses. So we know that.
But we haven't
this
done that with
combination.
digoxin, and we haven't done that with as much morphine, the huge exponential amount that we're giving.
We have
overdose
used to
amount.
see what we can see. We've experimented with different doses of different medications and to see what combination and works more quickly and with less adverse effects on the body. And so we have worked very hard over many years to perfect that.
But
And it's not going to be completely perfect, because no death is completely perfect.
Mm-hmm. But we don't know, and this is just the fact, we don't know what that feels like to the person that's dying.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if that's suffering for them. We don't know if that's painful to have a huge amount of digoxin damaging the heart. We just don't know.
When we don't know in the natural dying process.
We
and
do
you talk
actually.
you talk about things that we can't see and we can't measure.
But
and
people,
we can measure the
many
same
people,
measures we use for comfort in dying people. Those are the same measures we can use in aid in dying.
But we do have wonderful thousands and thousands of years of experience of the natural dying process
Not what's happening
without the
inside.
therapeutics. And then in recent years, with the fact that most people are dying in healthcare systems, they're usually connected to blood pressure machines, heart rate monitors, breathing. So we have a lot visible, and it is.
It's very sad.
It is.
Because
And
it should not be about numbers. One of the
Mm-hmm.
hospice tenets is that we don't treat numbers, we treat people. That's why you don't see a lot of vital signs at the end, why we aren't hooking people to machines, and we look, listen, and feel, and that's a skill that hospice and palliative care providers have, and we aren't trying to treat the numbers. So the numbers don't always mean anything. For example, with fever, so the body temperature is managed in the brainstem, and so just like that's the thermostat, just like a thermostat in your house. If the thermostat's broken, you're not going to get a correct reading. So you might have a body temperature that says 103, but you're perfectly comfortable. Whereas you could have a fever, but have a body temperature of 96. And we know that if the person has chills and they're shaking and they're burning up, sometimes you can feel it even without touching the body.
Mm-hmm.
We know that's a much more accurate measure as the body shuts down. So I'm not sure that we can say that it's completely accurate using those machines. And
I would beg to differ. Maybe it was in a way a happy accident that with all of these medicalized death, we have a pretty solid understanding of what a natural death looks like. And I think that is a blessing, and that's good. And that actually has helped and supported all of the advancements in hospice care of what medication does what, how much of it, when to use it to support that so it is as comfortable as possible. And I love the amazing palliative comfort care work that hospice does. It is irreplaceable, and it is a different type of science in healthcare compared to other times when there is a focus on, let's say, vital signs. With a medication like digoxin, it's very important to measure the vital signs and specifically know the heart rhythm in that therapeutic setting. But now we're using it with the intent of ending someone's life, and it hasn't been studied, and it is unnatural, and we don't know what that suffering internal experience is like. We know that they're asleep. We know that they can't respond, that they're unconscious because we just gave them 1,000 times, how much more morphine is it? 1,000 times more than the standard amount?
I don't know the percentage.
Yeah, it's a huge amount more
but
than the
yes,
standard dose. So we
absolutely.
know they're out of it. They just took more drugs of morphine than what people are dying of on the street, and we just give it to them in a concoction, along with a heart-stopping medication. And what are the other medications?
So DDA, digoxin, digitalis, diazepam, which is Valium.
And that's for the sedation part.
Amitriptyline, and that's a tricyclic antidepressant. Works on the heart. So DDA, morphine, and phenobarbital. And then there's some variations, but that's the typical combination of medications.
And that's a good point, the sedation part, because that is the reason that medication is given, to make sure that they are unconscious and basically paralyzed during the experience, unable to communicate. It's a forced loss of consciousness, but we don't know, again, what the physical internal experience is. We just know that they can't communicate it. And we know that they're having a huge overdose load of a lot of very strong and harmful medications all at one time.
So I wonder at what point we say respectfully that we have very divergent views and move to the next topic.
I guess one other comment is,
Yeah, go ahead.
I would at least have liked to see research studies, proper medical approach, analysis about what it does to somebody before jumping in. I think we jumped in way too soon. I don't think it would ever be a good idea to legalize assisted suicide. But we jumped the gun before we knew what these things are doing to people and whether or not it's actually increasing suffering.
And I would just, I guess, end this topic with saying that we don't consider it suicide. And I know that you call it suicide, but the person is already suffering from a mental illness and already sorry, the only other job.
In Canada, but not here.
You can't, if there's any question about a psychiatric diagnosis or any psychiatric disorder, then the person needs to be evaluated by a psychologist. So that was a funny slip. That's my other life.
Yeah. But no, I appreciate you bringing that up. So the suicide question, how about we make that our next topic?
We can do suicide question, or that's fine, or we can go to the disabilities.
Yeah, how about the suicide one, just because it is linear with where we're going.
Got you.
So the reason that I call it medical aid in dying, or what's popularly known as that, or euphemized as that, is because it's a term that is respected by physicians, it's respected by the general public, it's a word that actually describes what's happening. And in every other situation when somebody chooses to end their life, we call it suicide, except if they have a 6-month diagnosis, and I don't see the rationale of why we would change wording all of a sudden.
Because somebody is already has a very limited life expectancy, and it is really body sovereignty, the ability to make one's own decisions about one's body. And so we can, just as we make decisions about, it's not considered suicide if I have an advance directive and don't want to be resuscitated.
But it's also not ingesting a lethal dose of medication.
No, but I believe that that's analogous.
I don't, because I think taking a medication, just like, to me, shooting myself, even if I had a terminal diagnosis, I would still call that suicide.
And shooting yourself because it's not prescribed by a physician, and it's not studied, and it's not using a gun to kill oneself is often what occurs when people aren't allowed to legally, in a controlled setting, end their lives. They end up, and we have many instances of this, of doing something like shooting themselves, or taking medicine that's never been taken. I think we do have some information about opioids and overdose, but in this case, people are taking anything and everything or shooting themselves because their suffering is so high. And hospice does not. I am an eternal advocate for hospice, and I practice hospice and have for the last 22 years. But even with hospice and the best symptom management, I think we know that not all deaths are good deaths, and we also can't quantify somebody else's suffering. And so
but for those people, treating's always been the approach, and discovering better medications, better combinations, improvement to support the dying process. But medical aid in dying does something different. It kills, it ends life. But going back to the suicide.
Well, so does removing I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
So does discontinuing a ventilator, a respirator.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually is actively ending somebody's life. And someone else can do that.
That it's allowing, and that's for those that decide, that's allowing something that was inevitable to finally take its natural course, which is different than taking a concoction of medications.
You're taking away a treatment, and you talk about treatments, and so other people can take away a treatment for an illness, which is a ventilator.
Mm-hmm. Actually, what I'm talking about is, instead of doing treatment, giving a medication that's intentionally going to kill somebody. It's very different.
So it also depends on your definition or belief of the definition of therapeutic.
I don't think killing is a therapy.
So therapy, according to, remember, there's a Patient Self-Determination Act.
Yeah, let me.
That's federal. I'm very curious. And there's the Universal Healthcare Decisions Act, which is our New Mexico version of the federal Patient Self-Determination Act, and always whichever is more stringent takes precedence. And because of that, we do have the right to make our own decisions about the end of life, and I am a big proponent of that, and I think most people in the United States are proponents of the Patient Self-Determination Act.
We should all have autonomous decisions, decide on our treatments, have advanced directives, decide the comfort in therapy, whether or not we can have a death doula. There's 1,000 and more options yet to be discovered if we were to invest and focus on discovery and end-of-life care. It's just one option that I don't agree with, which is killing somebody or helping somebody end their life.
Everybody there is a spectrum or a continuum, and everybody has the right to know all of the options that they have in their end-of-life care.
I think everybody throughout their entire life always knows suicide is an option.
It depends. If it's true suicide, if you're not already in the dying process and you take a gun and shoot yourself,
or
that is suicide.
Whatever it is, or overdose, or there's a lot of different ways.
But this is done in a controlled setting, and so I will continue to differ.
The word suicide, the roots of it means self-death. The words that I've heard described from those who support medical aid in dying is it ends their life on their own terms in their own way. To me, it's just a play on words of not saying self-death or suicide in saying I'm ending my life instead of saying I'm going through suicide.
So I want to ask a question. I hope
Please,
it won't sound disrespectful, but how important is it to you whether somebody else decides to end their lives legally and in a controlled setting? Why is it important to you to make that decision for somebody else?
the same reason that I believe in preventing suicide at all stages is life is a beautiful, wonderful, once in a person can only experience their life. And when they take it, there's no more life to live. So
why does that bother you, that somebody else makes this decision? Maybe life is not a beautiful thing for them, and hospice cannot manage all symptoms and all possibilities because we're all human beings and we only have the tools that we have at our hands. So you know that, sadly, small amount, but not every death is a good death, even with the best hospice, palliative,
and not every
comfort
MAID
care.
death is smooth and perfect and beautiful.
You're correct.
For sure, yeah.
You're correct,
So
but the suffering is still ending.
I do believe that life is good in and of itself, and the reason that people have suffering is because of the social support. At least, I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff. I'm grateful for this surprise question, and
Sorry.
no, because it just gets to the heart of exactly what we're talking about. What makes life worth living? What is suffering? And specifically at the end of life, the reason I feel that dying should be lived in a supported experience is because without supports at any time of life, it's without having food, it's with having fear of something in the future that causes suffering. So the suffering and the quality of life at different stages, what we always do is try to find ways to support that person to live their fullest, whether it's providing food stamps, providing therapy, providing locks on their guns or moving guns out of the house, or keeping medications out that could harm kids, because life is so precious. It's the one thing that we have. And I think it's precious to the very end, and to intentionally end the life. I mean, it's the same thing. Why not?
I'm having difficulty understanding why it matters to you if somebody else makes that decision.
Because of
firstly,
love. Like
you
if you were to get hurt, if
what?
you were to get hurt, my heart would be so hurt and sad too. If you were to have a difficult life experience. So the reason that I care about someone else's life is because they're a human being just like me, and they need love, they need dignity,
yes, they
need
do,
care.
and they need the respect as adults.
Yes.
Decisionally capable adults to make their own decision within the legal continuum of care.
So I love
and
love.
There are a few things. One, you're coming from a Catholic perspective.
Not in this conversation.
Not okay, so personal perspective. But often that's the conversation in the Catholic Church that I've been very aware of, both in testimony and in many public conversations. Sure. That the Catholic view is that we decide what happens with all other people and prevent them from doing what they need to do. And we also want to describe suffering as something that is necessary and important. And Judaism is different from that, in that, for example, we do things because they're the right thing to do. We don't do things because some other time we'll get rewarded. Sure. That is, doing things for rewards isn't necessarily what...
that's what children do, little kids.
Yes, this is not... we don't know what someone else's suffering is. Sure. And so until you have been in that position, I have trouble understanding how you can say what's right for someone else when you haven't been in that position. Does that make sense?
It does, and thanks for bringing up like different religions, views, and things. It's not part of my approach to this conversation. My take on this, and I hope that the watchers or the viewers can understand this. As a human, and I feel like it's innate to us, especially when we have a tribal mentality that we're all connected, this universal consciousness even, when one of us suffers, we all suffer.
So
And
how
I
can
want
you
to-
not let people choose how they manage their suffering?
Well, there's a big difference between alleviating suffering and treating, doing therapy, than eliminating the sufferer and ending the life of the person that's suffering. That's, in all of humanity, that's never been viewed as compassionate or good for all of history.
So I would say that it is not fair to say that it's not ending suffering. It is ending suffering by utilizing MAID, and that is the individual's right to choose that if they have a terminal diagnosis and can make their own decisions and can self-ingest. And
I mean,
don't
it's
feel
doing
like,
both. It's ending suffering, but it's also ending the sufferer's life.
which is the sufferer's choice.
And that anybody can do it at any time, so why make it legal and why give this huge
Well,
amount of medications at once? And why
let
suicide prevention?
Someone who's dying,
Mhm.
well, because suicide is a different thing. That's not somebody who's already dying, understands the consequences, and can do this. It is, suicide prevention is a completely different thing. We're not talking about people who are already dying, and then unless we force them to do it in an uncontrolled setting and in a way that's, let's say, shooting themselves and really so traumatic to others. Whereas this is choosing when you die, with whom you die, how you die, and
With a big pharmaceutical, a big dose of a pharmaceutical that we
Correct.
don't understand. It's their choice. It's similar. It is similar to the gun. It's saying, I know what's going to happen if I pull the trigger. I know what's going to happen when I take this concoction. I don't know how it's
those
going to
are
work.
two completely different things. If
We don't-
I blow my brains out and it's
It's
shallow,
messier, that's for sure.
it is
But it's still ending life,
it's ending life, of course.
just like me.
But it's so traumatic for those. If I needed to die because my suffering, and we can't quantify someone else's suffering.
But we
or
can treat
qualify
it.
it.
We can treat
Oh, we
it if
can
we listen
always.
to what they say. We can.
Uh-uh,
There's
not always.
Palliative
This is-
sedation is always an option. It's a lot better
is.
than killing people.
So palliative sedation is legal and has always been legal. And if you don't know what that is,
Yes, thank
that's
you.
giving a large quantity of medications in order to alleviate suffering, and it could accidentally lead to death, but that's not the intent of it. So when you give greater and greater amounts of medicine, when we see that the person is no longer suffering by their vital signs and by their behavior, and granted, you're not measuring it, you're not seeing them inside. You can have vital signs, you can have, you can look at the body, look, listen, and feel.
But we can look on the inside.
And when that happens, with, I kind of forgot where we were, with, when that happens with a gunshot wound, it's traumatic for everybody, where everybody can otherwise see the controlled activity that we have practiced many, many times in this person's own
Yeah, well, we
prerogative.
definitely know how the gunshots work. We know how palliative sedation works because
Oh, that's
people
what
have
we were,
sedation.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sedation
My
is
mind's
a-
going too many places.
Yeah.
So in palliative sedation, we know that we can see when they stop suffering, but my point is, we see when they stop suffering, but you would say, well, how do we know they're not suffering?
Well, in that case, we know because we know how sedation works. We know what those medications do in certain quantities. And this is a practice that's been done in surgeries, for example. They know if we give this much amount, then it's going to have this effect.
And
It's
we also
extremely
know what's
studied and
having
understood.
when we give the aid in dying prescription.
We
So I
know
don't
what
know
those
that they're-
medications do, but we don't know the extreme amount what that does. We don't also know what diametrically does because that's never used in therapy in even a close to similar amount. So there's a lot of lack of knowledge that I feel the people deserve to know before not pulling the trigger, but before drinking the concoction.
And palliative sedation is, we think we know when to stop because we think we can see that has stopped suffering. And so we stop administering the medication, which could end in death, but that's not the intent. So how do you know then in palliative sedation that you're really stopping suffering? Well, how do you know when to stop?
Because we have the science and we have the research and we have the people, we have the reports after for people that go through a regular type of sedation, what it was like after they were done. So we actually have an understanding of that and the medication.
Not at that level.
Well, and that's the concern, because it's such a much higher level in medical aid and dying.
Look, listen, feel, measure vital signs. We can do all of those things. And we could do that in aid and dying if
it would be great.
But
it would have been great if it would have been done at first. Follow the scientific method, follow the healthcare method.
And it is sometimes done. However, we're taking the patient's autonomy away. If they want to have a beautiful death with their family and not measure vital signs, which don't always tell the story, as I gave the example with the temperature, those are just numbers.
Yeah, there's a lot of change and the whole body's going through change at the end of life.
And so why would we force people to be on a machine in order to know what's happening? When we can look, listen, and feel. We can take blood pressure, we can do those things. But to put them on a machine, one of the choices people get to make, and here at Inhora, they make that to not be measured by a machine and have the vital signs
natural, just respect holistic. We don't force people to live. That's something that they just get to do, evolutionary, however somebody looks at it. They're alive, so...
Oh, we do force people to live when we put them on a ventilator. Absolutely, we force them to live.
They choose to have that treatment. If they have the advanced directive. If they don't, then, I mean, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
That's not but there is choice.
But I do think it's analogous, but anyway, we won't if you...
But, so I don't think there's any reason to discuss why we are forcing people to not choose MAID. It's more, why are we giving the option for people to kill themselves? And why are we calling that
because
therapy?
And
why is it part of the healthcare system?
Setting, and people have the choice then to choose. They're already dying. Choose when they die, how they die, and where they die. And that is, and even if they choose to die at Inhora is probably the best care I've ever seen in my 42, almost 43 years of being a nurse and all the training years before that. Even then, we can't prevent all suffering.
That's true.
So I'm not suggesting that we do that here. It's very appropriate that it not be done here.
Sure.
I don't mean that at all.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't, and is part of Inhora, is part of the mission of Inhora, I think I might have asked you this before, is the mission just to provide dignified, comfortable care to anybody who's in need, or is it to stop somebody else from doing something that you don't agree with?
It has nothing to do with the second part. This is,
okay.
Our goal definitely isn't to stop people from,
From
our goal is
utilizing
to
that part.
love. Our goal is to love and to care. It's just a matter of education, and I believe so full-heartedly that people deserve to have all of the information.
Yes, they do.
They deserve to have
and
the
it's
whole
part of
picture.
love and care to have
Exactly.
all ends of the continuum, even if they live here.
Yeah.
I am not suggesting that any volunteers or staff here have those conversations.
Sure.
That's not appropriate in any facility by anybody who is not trained, but they have the right to know all of those things from their hospice, and hospice must give people all of their options when appropriate. If somebody is suffering from clinical depression, and there are times that it's not appropriate. If somebody can't self-ingest, if somebody is, for example, developmentally disabled, we don't give them that choice, which kind of brings me to the very strong argument about disabilities.
Oh yeah, we can jump into that too, but just to maybe to finish off this section I don't believe that just because something is safe and controlled or legal that it doesn't make it what it is without it being safe, controlled, or legal. I don't think that somebody ending their life with a
Blowing their
medical aid
brains out in their
prescription,
family's bedroom.
yeah,
That's not the same.
it's the appearance and the trauma that can happen through that.
Yes,
Absolutely,
which
there's
is
no doubt.
very,
There's
I
no
mean, you
doubt.
can't, I mean, there isn't a comparison. There's no way that we can say, well, might as well just have people go shoot themselves if their suffering is completely intolerable to them. I don't, it gives an option to your traditional suicide if somebody's not dying, if somebody is in, you know, severe throes of clinical depression, all of those things, or somebody is impaired by substances when they make the decision, and that's often the case with gunshot wounds and other kinds of suicide. And it is controlled so that those things aren't the case.
Yeah, there's
Lots of
clean ways that
safeguards.
people can kill themselves in other circumstances.
People can
It
smoke.
looks clean, right? That's a great point. There's so many ways that people can hurt themselves, harm themselves, end their lives.
And others.
So why
And their loved ones.
legalize it? Why make it a choice? Especially because we are lacking the facts and the information and the science
I
behind
believe that
that.
it is controlled and it is different than shooting yourself or disappearing so your family doesn't have any idea what happened to you.
I believe in treatment and care, not in killing life. I guess that's my conclusion.
And
not in ending life.
it's just, I think we differ in our views about the definition of care. And so love and care to me is allowing autonomy and allowing someone who's already dying to make a decision about how and when and where they die.
And I want to honor that, really. And I'll just take a moment now. I know that your heart is incredible. You are such a wonderful person. We are so blessed to have you as part of this organization.
Thank you. And
Your work in
I am not a
hospice is-
proponent of aid in dying. I am a proponent of people having the right to make that decision. So just to clarify, I don't want anyone to think that I am going around advocating here at Inhora or anywhere else, going, hey, don't you want to use aid in dying? It's legal now.
That's a great point too. You do utilize the other options. You do support the hospice.
100%.
Yeah, which is wonderful.
100%.
And that's definitely
It's a completely individual discussion, but thank you for your respecting me, and I respect you so much and your views, and there's no way to ever say enough what, I don't even know the words to say, fantastic and amazing don't cover the care that's provided here, and I'm very blessed to be volunteer here.
And we're blessed to have you, Libby. It's amazing.
And what you've done is amazing, so.
Thank you. And I think that's really important because even in these conversations, it can come off as so oppositional, and we do have to recognize the fact that the heart is compassion for both of us.
Absolutely.
And
Which is why we respect one another so much.
Right. Exactly. And that's why we can have the conversation. And it's beautiful that that you all know that those that support medical aid in dying, even if you do take the side that I'm on, it doesn't mean that those who believe in it are forcing it down people's throat, pressuring people.
Absolutely not. I mean,
No.
we give the option of, being on a ventilator for the rest of somebody's life.
Yeah.
We give all ends of the spectrum.
Exactly. The heart for, I would say, close to 100% of the people who are talking about MAID or mentioning it as an option are doing it for the reason that you mentioned, which is to alleviate suffering. They don't look at
Whatever
it.
that means to the individual, not what it means to us.
Right. Yeah. So it's important to recognize that that's a common ground, that there's no reason to oppose people's hearts and condemn people because they support medical aid in dying or because they don't, because both are coming from a good spot.
Just exactly as any social or political construct, we don't have to disrespect each other, and we can listen, and not necessarily, I'm not here to change your mind because I'm not going to, and you're not going to change mine.
Yeah.
But just as education and for people who may not be decided, although I don't think that one should decide what one wants until one is in the situation. But we're here to give the information and some food for thought. And I don't know if we have time to do the to talk about the disabilities, but I do want to be sure that I give some information here. I think we may be running out of time, and to learn more about medical aid in dying. End of Life Options, New Mexico. End of Life Options, nm.org is our organization here in the state, and then the national organizations.
Just a little note on them. They're the ones that are tracking the number of people who are utilizing medical aid in dying, because even though it's in the law, it hasn't been implemented, that part of the law.
We're doing the best we can. It is in our law.
So I want to give a shout out.
Was advocating for, and it's in the law, to report. The problem is Department of Health doesn't have any reporting system. We have a reporting mechanism that people can use. However, there's no system for tracking it in the Department of Health, so it's kind of just sitting there as an outlier.
And End of Life Options, they have a lot more options in there than medical aid in dying.
Absolutely.
They aren't so set on that, although they do quite a few social media posts. It's probably 1 in 10 is related to medical aid in dying. So it's a big proponent.
It's about advanced directives, it's about the Patient Self-Determination Act, it's about all kinds of things. And same with Compassion and Choices, which is the national organization, and they do many other things besides aid in dying.
But they are more focused on the medical aid in dying and changing the conversation and kind of the funding and the pushing. Same with Death with Dignity.
Pushing, we're not pushing, we're pushing for the right, we're not pushing for people to do it. I want to make that distinction. And then, so compassionandchoices.org, the conversationproject.org is primarily talking about having the conversation, making those decisions in advanced directives. It certainly is not, it's far from just having the goal of sharing information about aid in dying, and that's a wonderful place to get information, and deathwithdignity.org. So those are some other places that you can find information. I want to make sure I got that out there.
Yeah, Death with Dignity in particular does focus almost exclusively on pushing the legalization of physician-assisted suicide, I call it. So it doesn't have quite the support system. Other resources, Aging with Dignity, a beautiful organization. 5 Wishes, definitely check that out as you're looking at advanced directives.
And I'm always happy. Miles has my contact information. I teach the 5 Wishes and help people not to tell them what to put in their advanced directive, and it's an expanded advanced directive, where you want to die, what's comfortable for you. Do you want the door open or closed when you're dying? It's what music do you want? Do you want prayers? Do you want chanting? Do you want rock and roll? All kinds of comfort things. Do you want to be hot or do you like to be cold? And then all of those things about where you want to live and what you want your family to know and remember. And it also has, you can choose your surrogate or representative, we call it durable medical power of attorney. And those things can also be done. So it's the same as an advanced directive, but it's expanded into sort of a larger arena. And I've taught it in Shanghai, China, and I don't mean teach what to say or what to put, but help people understand how to have that conversation themselves and make their own decisions. So Miles can always get in touch with me for that.
Yeah, very good.
I'd be happy to do that.
I am so tempted to open up the can of worms of the disability and go there, but I think we better stop.
I think we,
Yeah,
so
we're
maybe
about
we
hour
do,
marks.
a part 3. I can give her one sentence. It's irrelevant because people who are not able to make decisions for themselves or self-administer can take part in this, and nobody can administer medication to somebody else. That would be killing them. So,
That's true. That's true.
I don't know if you want a one sentence reply.
One sentence, every disability advocacy group in the United States and Canada who has taken a stance on medical aid in dying opposes it.
And I would say that is, oh no, I'm giving another comment, but that is because of the lack of understanding of the safeguards inherent in our laws. And
That's your
so
opinion,
it
but
is-
I don't think they're uneducated.
Yeah, no,
I don't think
agree.
they lack
And
the information
normally,
and knowledge.
yeah,
But we'll save it for
we'll
another
save that for
day.
another day.
Yeah.
Love
Thanks,
you.
Libby. Love ya.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.
Stop this. Here we go.